An elderly multimillionaire, Friedrich von Stein, with vision and hearing problems, was cured by the end-of-year holidays but didn't tell his family. And what happened next? What secret could an elderly multimillionaire be hiding from his own family during the most magical time of the year? You won't believe what happens next. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. Friedrich von Stein sat in the grand parlor of his opulent mansion, a space that had once been filled with laughter and warmth but now felt like a gilded cage. The walls, adorned with exquisite paintings and family portraits that captured moments of joy and triumph, seemed to close in on him. Sunlight filtered through the large bay windows, casting shimmering patterns on the marble floor, yet the beauty of the scene did little to lift his spirits. At 82, Friedrich's world had shrunk considerably. His once vibrant life was now dominated by the shadows of his deteriorating health, where the simple pleasures of sight and sound were fading memories. As he sat in his plush armchair, he strained to hear the soft rustle of the leaves outside, the laughter of children playing in the distance, and the melodic chime of the grandfather clock ticking away the seconds. Each sound felt like a distant echo, teasing him with what he could no longer fully grasp. His vision, too, had betrayed him. The once crisp outlines of furniture and decor now blurred and indistinct. In the midst of his luxurious surroundings, Friedrich felt a profound sense of isolation. The mansion that had once been a symbol of success and happiness now loomed as a reminder of his solitude. Greta, his devoted caregiver, moved gracefully around the room, her presence a comforting constant in Friedrich's life. She was a woman in her 50s, with a kind face and gentle demeanor, who had taken on the role of not just a caretaker but also a confidant. Friedrich relied on her for guidance through the labyrinth of his own home, which had become a maze of shadows and echoes. He listened carefully to her footsteps, the soft padding against the polished floor, as she approached him with a tray of tea. The fragrant aroma wafted through the air, yet it was a bittersweet reminder of the life he once led, a life filled with gatherings, laughter, and the clinking of glasses during festive celebrations. As his family arrived for their regular visits, Friedrich's heart sank. They would fill the room with their voices, but rather than genuine concern, their conversations revolved around his wealth and the future of his estate. He could see the veiled glances exchanged among them, the subtle nudges and whispers that suggested a greater interest in his fortune than in his well-being. Klaus, the eldest, was always eager to discuss investments and estate planning, while Anya and Johann chimed in with their own grandiose ideas about how they could manage their father's wealth more efficiently. Each visit felt like an obligation, a performance where none of them were truly present. Friedrich felt a pang of sadness as he watched them interact. Their laughter did not reach their eyes, and their smiles felt disingenuous. It was as if they were actors in a play, reciting lines without any true emotion. He longed for the days when family gatherings meant love and connection, not discussions of financial gain. The realization that he was merely a means to an end weighed heavily on him, deepening his sense of isolation. The festive season was approaching, and with it came the reminder of years gone by, memories of Christmases filled with joy and togetherness. He remembered the warmth of the fireplace, the scent of pine and cinnamon, and the sounds of carols echoing through the halls. But now, as the holiday decorations were unpacked and adorned around the mansion, Friedrich felt an ache in his heart. The spirit of the season had been eclipsed by the shadows of greed and superficiality that surrounded him. One fateful day, during a routine checkup with his doctor, Friedrich learned about a groundbreaking treatment that held the promise of restoring his vision and hearing. The news ignited a flicker of hope within him, a light that had been dimmed for far too long. He envisioned a world once again filled with vibrant colors and the sweet melodies of life. But the thought of sharing this news with his family filled him with trepidation. Would they truly celebrate his recovery, or would their focus shift to how they could exploit his newfound abilities for their gain? Friedrich left the clinic with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The idea of seeing and hearing again was exhilarating, yet the prospect of revealing this to his family felt daunting. He pondered the implications of his decision, weighing the potential joy of regaining his senses against the risk of exposing himself to their insatiable greed. In the solitude of his thoughts, Friedrich made a choice. He would keep his recovery a secret, savoring the joy of rediscovery on his own terms, away from the prying eyes of his family. As the days passed, the festive season drew closer, and Friedrich found himself lost in a whirlwind of preparations. His children, Klaus, Anja, and Johann, gathered in the mansion to discuss their plans for the holidays. They arrived with an air of excitement, but as Friedrich sat in the corner of the room, he could see through the facade. Their laughter echoed off the walls, but it lacked the warmth and sincerity he craved. Instead, it was a cacophony of strategy and ambition. As they plotted their approach to the family fortune, Friedrich observed them from his vantage point, the shadows of the room cloaking him in anonymity. Klaus was animatedly discussing the potential benefits of a new investment opportunity, gesturing wildly as he laid out his grand vision for the family's wealth. Anja chimed in with her own ideas, while Johann nodded along, eager to gain favor. The conversation danced around him, a whirlwind of ambition that left Friedrich feeling like an invisible spectator in his own life. He watched as they exchanged knowing glances, the underlying tension palpable. Their superficial affection for him was evident. They spoke of family traditions and holiday cheer, yet their true intentions lay just beneath the surface. Each word seemed laced with ulterior motives, as if they were calculating the best way to position themselves for his eventual decline. The realization settled heavily on Friedrich's heart, a bittersweet reminder that the love he had once taken for granted was now overshadowed by the specter of greed. The days turned into a blur of activity, with the mansion transformed into a festive haven of lights and decorations. Yet, as the holidays approached, Friedrich felt an increasing sense of disconnection from the joyous atmosphere. He longed for meaningful conversations, for laughter that stemmed from genuine affection rather than a desire for wealth. The thought of celebrating Christmas with his family felt like a bitter irony, a reminder of the chasm that had grown between them. In the midst of the holiday preparations, Friedrich found solace in the quiet moments spent with Greta. She understood his struggles and listened to the unspoken words that weighed heavily on his heart. Her presence was a balm to his wounded spirit, and he often found himself sharing thoughts he dared not voice to anyone else. Together, they navigated the complexities of his life, a duo against the tide of superficiality that surrounded them. As the first snowflakes began to fall, blanketing the world outside in a soft layer of white, Friedrich knew that he stood at a crossroads. The secrets he kept would shape the course of his family's future, and he felt a stirring within him, a desire to reclaim the love that had been lost in the shadows of greed. Little did he know that the path ahead would lead to a journey of self-discovery and revelation, where the true essence of family would be tested against the backdrop of wealth and ambition. Friedrich awoke slowly, the gentle light filtering through the heavy drapes of his bedroom. The world around him felt strange, yet distinctly vibrant. As his eyes blinked open, he was immediately struck by an explosion of color that danced across the walls, the hues bright and rich in a way he hadn't experienced in years. The previously muted shades of his once opulent surroundings now sang with life. He turned his head slightly, and the sound of the wind brushing against the leaves in the garden reached his ears, a soft, rustling whisper that filled him with an overwhelming sense of joy. Every note, every sound, every color flooded his senses and wrapped around him like a warm embrace. Friedrich sat up in bed, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. His heart raced as he recalled the treatment, the miracle that had restored him to a state he thought was long lost. He could see the intricate patterns of the wallpaper, the glimmer of sunlight on the polished wood furniture, and the delicate shadows that danced across the floor. He could hear the gentle ticking of the clock on the wall, a sound that had become a distant memory during his years of isolation. The realization that he was once again a part of the world filled him with exhilaration and a tinge of apprehension. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and placed his feet on the plush carpet. The sensation was foreign yet comforting. He stood up slowly, his joints creaking, a reminder of his age, but his spirit felt buoyant. Friedrich took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp morning air that carried the faint scent of blooming flowers from the garden. The thought of his family quickly crossed his mind, and with it, a wave of anxiety washed over him. Their previous visits had been tainted with an underlying current of greed, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they would see his restoration as a means to an end. He dressed carefully, selecting a tailored suit that had been lying untouched in his wardrobe for far too long. As he fastened the cuffs of his shirt, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. The reflection staring back at him was a man transformed, not just in appearance but in spirit. He felt alive, vibrant, and brimming with potential. However, he resolved to keep this newfound vitality a secret, a hidden gem protected from the sharp edges of his family's ambitions. After breakfast, he ventured out to his garden, a place he had once cherished but had avoided during his years of struggle. The garden was a riot of colors, with blossoms bursting forth in a kaleidoscope of shades. He walked along the path, feeling the earth beneath his feet, and listened to the symphony of nature around him. Birds chirped merrily, and the distant sound of a fountain bubbling added to the harmonious atmosphere. Friedrich felt as if he were rediscovering a world he had long been barred from, a world filled with beauty and possibility. In the days that followed, Friedrich kept his recovery a closely guarded secret. He mimicked his previous frailty, allowing Greta to guide him as he pretended to stumble through his daily routines. He observed his family during their visits, noting their reactions and interactions, all while concealing the truth of his restored senses. Klaus, Anya, and Johann spoke of their lives, their own struggles, and fleeting moments of superficial connection with him. Their conversations were punctuated with laughter, but Friedrich could sense the underlying tension, the unspoken competition that simmered just below the surface. One evening, while seated in the grand living room, Friedrich watched as his children gathered for what was intended to be a warm family discussion. Their faces, illuminated by the flickering flames of the fireplace, revealed a mix of affection and something darker, a glint of calculation that sent a shiver down his spine. He leaned back in his chair, feigning a moment of frailty, while his heart raced at the thought of what they might reveal in their moment of candor. Klaus's voice rose above the others as he began to speak of their father's will, the words dripping with a thin veneer of concern. Anya chimed in, echoing her brother's sentiments, her tone sugary sweet but laced with an unmistakable edge. Johann, the youngest, added his own thoughts, and the conversation soon spiraled into a discussion of inheritance, the perceived value of his estate, and the notion of their father's declining health. They spoke in hushed tones, glancing toward Friedrich to ensure he was not paying attention, yet the crack in the door allowed him to absorb every word. Friedrich's heart sank as he listened to their machinations unfold. Their plans to manipulate him into changing his will unfolded like a tapestry of deception, the threads woven tightly with greed and ambition. It became abundantly clear that their concern for him was a mere facade, a strategic play to secure their financial futures. The very family he had devoted his life to protecting now viewed him as a means to an end, an obstacle to be navigated rather than a beloved father. As the evening wore on and the shadows in the room deepened, Friedrich felt a sense of resolve building within him. He had spent too long in the shadows, both literally and metaphorically. The time had come for him to reclaim his narrative, to confront the reality of his situation head-on. The emotional turmoil that had once rendered him powerless now transformed into a fierce determination to protect his legacy, not just in terms of wealth, but in the love and integrity he had always wished to cultivate within his family. He slipped away from the door, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Friedrich began to formulate a plan, an intricate strategy for their upcoming holiday gathering that would expose the truth behind their smiles. He envisioned a carefully orchestrated confrontation, one that would reveal not only his recovery, but also the depths of their greed. He would not allow them to dictate the terms of his life or his legacy any longer. As the days ticked down to the holiday gathering, Friedrich felt a sense of anticipation and dread. He had once cherished this time of year, filled with warmth, laughter, and family gatherings. Now, it felt tainted by the knowledge of his family's true intentions. Yet, he also felt invigorated by the prospect of finally taking control of his life and confronting the shadows that had dominated it for too long. He spent the nights reflecting on the man he had been, the father he had wanted to be, and the legacy he wished to leave behind. The garden became his sanctuary, a place where he could gather his thoughts, plan his approach, and prepare himself for the emotional storm that was about to unfold. With each passing day, Friedrich felt more resolute, ready to face his family, ready to reclaim his narrative, and ready to reveal the truth that had been hidden in plain sight. As the grand clock chimed the hour, Friedrich stood at the top of the sweeping staircase, his hands resting lightly on the polished banister. The opulent decorations draped across his mansion glimmered with twinkling lights, casting soft reflections in the ornate mirrors. He watched as his children began to arrive, their laughter echoing through the high ceilings, bringing a bittersweet flutter to his heart. The air was thick with the scent of pine and cinnamon, a stark contrast to the unease that brewed within him. Klaus, the eldest, strode in with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance, his tailored suit fitting him like a second skin. Anya followed closely behind, her heels clicking against the marble floor, a bright smile plastered on her face that did little to mask the calculating glint in her eyes. Johann trailed, his demeanor more subdued, yet a flicker of ambition sparked in his gaze as he surveyed the lavish surroundings. As they embraced him, Friedrich felt the warmth of their bodies but sensed the coldness in their hearts, a dissonance he could no longer ignore. They exchanged pleasantries, their voices sweetened with feigned affection. "You look well, father," Klaus remarked, his tone dripping with insincerity. Friedrich nodded, masking his true feelings behind a facade of gratitude. He was acutely aware of the underlying tension that hung in the air, the way their eyes darted toward the grand dining table, adorned with silverware that gleamed under the chandelier's light. The table was set for a feast, yet the true banquet was the one playing out in their minds, a feast of greed and ambition. As they settled into the living room, Friedrich took a moment to observe them, his keen senses now fully restored, allowing him to see and hear the subtleties that had eluded him for so long. The way Klaus leaned back, his arms crossed, as if claiming his territory. Anya's nervous laughter that punctuated her remarks, a desperate bid for attention. Johann's quiet demeanor, masking a smoldering desire to prove himself worthy of his father's legacy. Each nuance painted a vivid portrait of their intentions, and Friedrich felt an overwhelming urge to protect himself from the storm brewing around him. Dinner was a lavish affair, the table overflowing with gourmet dishes that showcased the finest culinary arts. As they began to eat, Friedrich watched the dynamics unfold. Klaus engaged in a boastful recounting of his latest business venture, his voice booming with pride as he detailed every dollar earned. Anya chimed in, her laughter a tad too loud, as if to drown out any hint of competition. Johann, quiet and contemplative, occasionally joined the conversation but seemed to be biding his time, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. As the evening progressed, Friedrich felt a pang of sadness wash over him. Memories flooded back of a time when these gatherings were filled with laughter and genuine connection, not the undercurrents of jealousy and competition that now characterized their interactions. He longed for the days when his children sought his wisdom, not his wealth. The realization settled heavily on his heart, igniting a fierce determination within him to reveal his true self, to challenge the narratives they had spun around his frailty. The clinking of glasses broke his reverie as Klaus raised his wine glass, offering a toast. "To family," he declared, his smile wide but his eyes betraying an ulterior motive. Friedrich lifted his glass, the cool crystal cool against his palm, and took a sip. The rich flavor danced on his palate, yet it felt hollow, much like the sentiments exchanged around the table. As the conversation shifted to more personal topics, Friedrich seized the opportunity to plant the seeds of doubt in their minds. He leaned forward, his expression grave, and shared a fabricated tale of impending financial ruin, a supposed investment gone awry that threatened to decimate his fortune. He watched as the impact of his words rippled through them, a mixture of feigned concern and barely concealed glee flickering across their faces. Klaus's brow furrowed, but it was clear he was calculating the implications of such news. Anya's eyes sparkled with a hint of excitement, a vision of her future already dancing in her head, while Johann's expression darkened, perhaps sensing the loss of the security he had always taken for granted. Friedrich felt a surge of triumph. He was no longer the frail old man they had painted him to be. He was a formidable force, and the revelation of his restored senses had emboldened him. As they continued their meal, Friedrich noted the subtle shifts in their behavior. Klaus's attempts to reassure him were laced with an urgency that hinted at desperation. Anya leaned closer, her voice softening as she inquired about his health, but the undertone of her inquiry was unmistakable. She was probing, searching for any sign of weakness to exploit. Johann, meanwhile, sat quietly, his face a mask of contemplation, as though he was weighing the truth of his father's words against his own desires. Friedrich's heart raced as he reveled in the clarity of his thoughts. Each bite of food, each sip of wine, felt like a declaration of his resolve. He was not merely a pawn in their game. He was the king, and he would not be so easily manipulated. In the depths of his heart, he knew that revealing his recovery would change everything, but the time was not yet right. He wanted to see their true colors, to witness how they would respond to the specter of losing their inheritance. As the evening wore on, the conversation became more animated, the laughter more boisterous, yet Friedrich felt a disquiet growing within him. The very essence of their interactions felt tainted, and he feared that the secrets he harbored would only serve to deepen the chasm between them. Would they ever truly care for him, or was their affection forever intertwined with the allure of his fortune? With the dessert served and the table cleared, Friedrich contemplated his next move. The warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the chill that had settled in his bones, a reminder of the emotional turmoil swirling around him. He could feel the weight of their gazes, the unspoken questions lingering in the air. He was ready to confront the truth, to challenge the narrative they had constructed, but he would do so on his terms. As the clock struck 9, Friedrich decided he would not allow the evening to end without a final test of their loyalty. He would push them further, delve deeper into their motivations, and see just how far their greed extended. The stage was set, and he was determined to play his final card. The air crackled with tension, and as he prepared to share one last piece of information, he felt a sense of empowerment surge through him. The night was far from over, and he would emerge from this gathering not as a victim but as a man reclaiming his narrative. Friedrich ambled through the paths of his expansive garden, the crisp winter air invigorating his spirit. Each step, a revelation, felt foreign yet familiar as he took in the vibrant colors of the flowers that still clung to life despite the chill. A few stubborn petals fluttered gently in the breeze, and the scent of pine wafted through the air, mingling with the earthy fragrance of damp soil. The garden, once a sanctuary, now served as a backdrop to his thoughts. Memories of laughter, shared moments, and the warmth of familial love woven into the fabric of his past. As he walked, Friedrich's mind drifted back to brighter days. He recalled family gatherings where joy resonated through the halls of his mansion, laughter echoing as his children played games on the sprawling lawn, sun-drenched and carefree. He remembered the way Anya's eyes sparkled with mischief as she chased after Johann, their carefree banter enveloping him in a sense of belonging. Those were the times when love was palpable, and the notion of wealth felt secondary to the bonds they shared. Yet, as the years passed and the shadows of his ailments encroached, those cherished moments faded into the background, replaced by a suffocating silence. His heart ached with regret for the estrangement that had blossomed like a weed in the garden of their lives. He felt the weight of unspoken words, of affection unexpressed, and the slow unraveling of connections that were once steadfast. It was as if the vibrant colors of his past had dulled, leaving behind a monochrome landscape of longing and bitterness. Greta, his devoted caregiver, had become a lifeline in his solitude. Her presence was a gentle reminder that he was not entirely alone, yet the aching void of family ties remained. As he continued to stroll through the garden, the overwhelming beauty of nature contrasted sharply with the turmoil within him. He could hear the faint chirping of birds, their songs a symphony of life, yet they felt distant. Was it too late to mend the rift that had formed between him and his children? Greta, with her perceptive nature, had sensed the turbulence within Friedrich. She observed him closely, always ready to offer comfort and support. It was during one of their quiet moments together, amid the lush greenery of the garden, that she broached the subject of his family. She had witnessed the pain etched on Friedrich's face, the longing for connection, and the weight of his secret pressing heavily on his heart. She encouraged him to confront his children, to unveil the truth of his recovery. Perhaps, she suggested, this could serve as an opportunity for healing, a chance to reclaim what had been lost. Her words resonated with Friedrich, igniting a flicker of hope amidst his despair. The idea of revealing his restored senses stirred a mixture of anxiety and anticipation within him. Would his children be receptive to the truth? Or would they, blinded by their greed, dismiss him once more? As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the garden, Friedrich contemplated Greta's encouragement. The notion of honesty, of vulnerability, swirled in his mind. It was a daunting prospect, but the thought of remaining silent any longer felt unbearable. He had lived too long in the shadows, too long pretending to be someone he was not. The time had come to reclaim his voice, to re-establish a connection with the three individuals who were once the center of his world. With renewed determination, Friedrich made his way back to the house. The mansion loomed before him, a symbol of both his success and his solitude. Each step toward the entrance felt heavy with the weight of his decision. He understood that revealing his recovery would not only unveil his senses, but would also expose the fissures within their family dynamics. He had witnessed their greed, their superficiality, but he hoped that deep down, beneath the layers of ambition and desire, lay a spark of genuine love waiting to be reignited. Stepping into the warmth of the living room, he found Greta arranging the holiday decorations. The soft glow of twinkling lights cast an inviting ambience, yet the air felt thick with unspoken tension. She glanced up, her eyes meeting his with understanding. He nodded, silently conveying his resolve, and she smiled encouragingly, her presence a reassuring anchor. As he settled into his favorite armchair, Friedrich felt a sense of calm wash over him. He envisioned the family gathering that was to come, the faces of Klaus, Anya, and Johann illuminated by the soft light of the room. There was no guarantee of how they would react, but he knew he owed it to himself and to them to reveal the truth. The idea of stepping into the light, both literally and metaphorically, filled him with a sense of purpose. In the days that followed, Friedrich and Greta meticulously planned for the family meeting, carving out a space for honesty amidst the facade of wealth and ambition. They chose the dining room, adorned with festive decorations, a table set for a feast that would symbolize not just the holiday spirit but a potential rebirth of their familial ties. Friedrich envisioned the warmth of shared meals and laughter echoing through the halls once again. As the appointed day approached, the anticipation built within him. He could feel the flutter of nerves in his stomach, but resolve anchored him. Greta remained by his side, her unwavering support bolstering his confidence. Together, they envisioned a future where love triumphed over greed, where reconciliation transformed their fractured relationships into something beautiful. On the morning of the meeting, Friedrich woke to the soft glow of dawn filtering through the curtains. He took a moment to breathe deeply, grounding himself in the present. The garden outside, now dusted with frost, sparkled like diamonds under the sun. He realized that just as nature underwent cycles of renewal, so too could his relationships. Change was possible, and he was ready to embrace it. As he prepared for the day, he felt an unfamiliar energy coursing through him. It was a mixture of hope and trepidation, a recognition of the immense vulnerability that lay ahead. He dressed carefully, donning a tailored suit that had long hung in his closet, a reminder of the man he once was. He wanted his children to see him, not as a frail old man, but as someone who had reclaimed his strength and clarity. As the clock ticked closer to the hour of the meeting, Friedrich's heart raced with anticipation. He knew that the moment would arrive soon when he would stand before his family, bearing not just the weight of his recovery, but the burden of unspoken truths. In that moment, he would either bridge the chasm that had formed between them or risk deepening it further. With a final glance in the mirror, Friedrich took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and made his way to the dining room, where the stage was set for the unveiling of his truth. Friedrich stood in the grand, tastefully decorated living room of his mansion, where the flickering lights of the Christmas tree cast a warm glow on the polished marble floors. The air was thick with tension as he awaited the arrival of his children. It was a scene he had envisioned countless times after his miraculous recovery, but now, standing on the precipice of revelation, he felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety swirling within him. He had spent years trapped in shadows, both literally and figuratively, and now he was ready to step into the light, to reclaim not just his senses but his dignity. The room was adorned with garlands of pine and shimmering ornaments, a stark contrast to the somber mood that enveloped him. He could hear the faint sound of his children's voices echoing from the hallway, their laughter a hollow reminder of the insincerity that had become the hallmark of their interactions. Each step they took toward the living room seemed to amplify his resolve. He would not let their greed poison this moment any longer. As Klaus, Anya, and Johann entered, Friedrich observed their expressions. Curiosity laced with trepidation. They exchanged glances, their usual bravado momentarily silenced, as they took in the sight of their father. A slight smirk played on Klaus's lips, but it faltered when Friedrich met his gaze head-on, unflinching. The moment felt suspended in time, the air crackling with unspoken words and hidden agendas. Friedrich took a deep breath, allowing the sweet scent of pine and cinnamon to fill his lungs, grounding him as he prepared to unveil his truth. The room was silent, save for the soft crackle of the fireplace. He gathered his thoughts, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. His heart raced, but he steadied himself, recalling the joy of seeing the world in vibrant colors and hearing the laughter of children, the rustle of leaves in the wind. Sensations that had been mere memories for too long. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but laden with emotion. The words echoed in the stillness, drawing their full attention. As he spoke, he felt the warmth of his newfound senses envelop him, a sense of clarity that had been absent for years. "I have something important to share with you." The room remained still, the atmosphere thick with anticipation as he continued. "I have regained my vision and hearing." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Friedrich allowed himself to bask in the shock that washed over their faces. Klaus's jaw dropped slightly, Anya's eyes widened in disbelief, and Johann's expression morphed from confusion to realization as the implications sank in. He watched as their initial astonishment turned into a whirlwind of emotions, anxiety, anger, and a hint of desperation. They struggled to comprehend how the frail old man they had come to see as a mere figurehead could suddenly reclaim his faculties. Friedrich felt a flicker of satisfaction as he realized that their facade of caring was crumbling before his eyes, revealing the greed that had lain dormant beneath the surface. The silence that followed was deafening. Friedrich's heart swelled with a mix of triumph and sorrow as he observed the disarray unfolding before him. Klaus's brow furrowed as he processed the revelation, his mind racing with the implications of their planned manipulations now laid bare. Anya fidgeted nervously, her polished exterior cracking as she struggled to maintain her composure. Johann, caught between disbelief and realization, shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Friedrich felt a surge of empowerment wash over him. This was his moment, not just to reveal his recovery, but to confront the web of deceit that had ensnared his family. He took a step closer, the warmth of the fire illuminating his face, casting shadows that danced around him. "You thought me too weak to see through your plans, didn't you?" he continued, his voice unwavering. "You believed that my silence meant acquiescence." The air grew thick with tension as he looked each of them in the eye, unearthing the hidden truths that had long remained unspoken. Klaus's bravado faltered, his earlier confidence draining away as he realized the gravity of Friedrich's words. Anya's carefully cultivated persona began to crack, revealing the insecurity that had lingered beneath. Johann, who had always been the peacemaker, stood frozen, his expression a mixture of fear and disbelief. Friedrich pressed on, his voice resonating with authority. "Your actions have not only betrayed my trust but have also tarnished the bond we once shared as a family. You have allowed greed to overshadow love." The words hung in the air, heavy with disappointment, and he could see their defenses crumbling. the masks they wore slipping away one by one. He felt a pang of sadness as he recalled the moments of tenderness they had once shared, the laughter that had echoed through the halls of their home. But those memories were now tainted by the reality of their intentions. He longed for the connection they had lost, the genuine affection that had been replaced by a toxic desire for wealth. Friedrich took a moment to gather himself, his heart heavy with the weight of the truth he was unveiling. This house, this fortune, it means nothing if it comes at the cost of our family. I implore you to reflect on what truly matters. His voice softened, infused with a sense of vulnerability. I want my children back, not the versions you've become in pursuit of my legacy. The room fell into a profound silence, each of them grappling with the enormity of his words. Friedrich's heart ached as he watched their faces contort with conflicting emotions, shame, regret, and perhaps a flicker of understanding. This was the moment he had hoped for, the chance to bridge the chasm that had grown between them. He could see the gears turning in their minds, the walls they had built starting to crumble, piece by piece. In that moment, Friedrich realized that this unveiling was not just about his recovery. It was an opportunity for transformation, a chance to reclaim the essence of family that had been lost in the pursuit of material gain. He felt a sense of hope bloom within him, a quiet determination to guide them back toward the light. As he stood before them, resolute and unyielding, he understood that the path ahead would not be easy. But he was ready to face the challenges that lay ahead, fueled by the love that still resided within him, waiting to break free from the shadows. And as he looked into the eyes of his children, he silently vowed to fight for their bond, to nurture it back to life, no matter how long it would take. As the heavy silence lingered in the air following Friedrich's revelation, the atmosphere in the ornate dining room shifted palpably. The opulence that had once seemed to suffocate their relationships now felt like a gilded cage, and the three siblings found themselves confronting their own vulnerabilities. Klaus, the eldest, stood with his arms crossed, a familiar defensive posture that now felt inadequate. His sharp features softened momentarily as he gazed at his father, the weight of his insecurities becoming apparent. Anya, always the peacemaker, shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting between her brothers and her father, struggling to find the right words. Johann, the youngest, whose bravado often masked his self-doubt, looked down at the table, tracing the intricate patterns of the tablecloth with his fingertips. In that moment of stillness, their facade began to crumble. Klaus cleared his throat, his voice shaky but earnest as he attempted to articulate the fears that had plagued him for years. He spoke of feeling overshadowed by his father's monumental success, a shadow that had loomed over him since childhood. The pressure of living up to the family name had made him feel like a perpetual disappointment, a fact that had driven him to seek out validation through material means. He confessed that his perceived love for wealth was a misguided attempt to gain his father's approval, a way to prove his worth in a world that often seemed to value only success. Anya, moved by her brother's vulnerability, found her voice amidst the rising tide of emotion. She shared her own struggles, the constant comparisons to her brothers that had left her feeling inadequate. She had always longed for her father's affection, but instead, she felt like a pawn in their family's game of wealth and power. Anya's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she expressed her desire for genuine connection, for the kind of love that transcended financial legacy. She longed to know her father as a person, not just as the formidable figure who had built an empire. Johann, too, took a step forward, his bravado replaced by a heartfelt acknowledgement of his own shortcomings. He admitted that he had often fought for attention through reckless behavior, hoping to distract from the tumultuous emotions that lay beneath his surface. The realization that their father had been suffering in silence, while they had been consumed by their own ambitions, struck him like a bolt of lightning. The guilt washed over him, and he felt the gravity of their actions sink deep into his heart. Friedrich listened intently, his heart swelling with a bittersweet mixture of pride and sorrow. The transformation he had witnessed in his children was profound. They were no longer the superficial figures he had observed during the holiday gatherings. Instead, they were revealing their true selves, raw and unfiltered. The years of estrangement and misunderstanding began to dissolve in the warmth of their shared confessions, creating a fragile space where healing could begin. In an unexpected surge of empathy, Friedrich proposed a family project that could honor their newfound desires for connection. He suggested that they work together to support charitable causes, activities that would allow them to bond over shared values rather than the pursuit of wealth. The idea was met with a mix of hesitance and intrigue, but gradually, the siblings began to see the merit in it. Klaus, who had always been drawn to philanthropy but had never acted on it, felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Anya's enthusiasm for helping others surged as she envisioned creating initiatives that aligned with her passions. Johann, usually the skeptic, found himself intrigued by the notion of working as a cohesive unit, a family united by purpose rather than materialism. As the discussion unfolded, the tension that had once permeated the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of shared responsibility. Friedrich felt a wave of relief wash over him. It was as if the shackles of their past had been loosened. He could sense the shift in energy as they spoke of potential projects, supporting local shelters, educational programs for underprivileged children, and environmental initiatives that resonated with their values. The conversation flowed freely, ideas bouncing back and forth, igniting a passion that had long been dormant. In the days that followed, the family began to put their plans into action. They spent hours brainstorming, researching local organizations that could benefit from their support. Friedrich watched with a mixture of joy and disbelief as his children began to collaborate, their laughter echoing through the halls of the mansion. It was the first time in years that the house felt alive, filled with the sounds of creativity and camaraderie. The barriers that had once divided them were being dismantled, brick by brick, as they worked side by side. The holiday season approached with a newfound spirit of warmth and generosity. The air was filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon, and the mansion, once a symbol of isolation, transformed into a hub of activity and excitement. Together, they organized a charity gala, inviting friends and acquaintances from their social circle. The event promised to be a celebration of not only their family's legacy, but also a testament to their commitment to giving back. On the night of the gala, the grand hall was adorned with twinkling lights and elegant decorations. Guests arrived, their laughter and chatter blending into a symphony of joy. Friedrich stood at the center of it all, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. He observed his children as they mingled with guests, their interactions genuine and warm. The superficiality that had once defined their relationships was replaced by a sense of authenticity, a bond forged through shared purpose. As the evening progressed, Friedrich took a moment to step outside onto the terrace, where the crisp winter air greeted him. He gazed up at the stars, a tapestry of brilliance against the dark sky. It was a moment of reflection, a culmination of all the changes that had taken place within his family. The weight of his past struggles seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of hope for the future. When he re-entered the hall, he found his children gathered around a table, animatedly discussing their plans for the next charity event. The sight filled him with warmth, and as they caught sight of him, they beckoned him to join. He felt the embrace of their love envelop him, a love that had been buried beneath layers of greed and misunderstanding, now flourishing in the light of their shared journey. The holidays took on a new meaning for Friedrich and his family. No longer were they mere celebrations of wealth and status. They became a time for connection, reflection, and gratitude. As they gathered around the Christmas tree, exchanging heartfelt gifts that symbolized their growth, Friedrich realized that the true treasure lay not in material wealth, but in the bonds they had rebuilt. The laughter that filled the room resonated in his heart, a melody of hope for a brighter tomorrow. In the weeks that followed, the siblings continued to work together, discovering new facets of one another along the way. They forged deeper connections, learned to communicate openly, and began to understand the importance of vulnerability. Friedrich no longer felt like a spectator in his own life. He was an active participant in a story of redemption and love. As the new year approached, Friedrich felt a sense of peace settle within him. The journey had not been easy, but it was one worth taking. He had transformed their family's narrative from one of greed and ambition into one of compassion and unity. In that moment, he understood that while wealth could build walls, love had the power to break them down. Together, they stepped into the future, ready to embrace the challenges and joys that awaited them, united as a family, filled with hope and love.